Alec, why did you lie to Agent Owen, Agent Croft, and Deputy Rutland about the last time you saw Maggie and Paul?
As my addiction evolved over time, I would get in these situations or circumstances where I would get paranoid thinking. It could be anything that triggered it. It might be a look somebody gave me. It might be a reaction somebody had to something I did. It might be a policeman following me in a car. That night, June 7th, after finding Mags and Paul, don't talk to anybody without Danny with you. All my partners were just repeatedly telling me that.
That, for any of you that have been far, far away for a pretty long time, was Alex Murdaugh. And that was his explanation of why he had lawyers with him when he was being interrogated by the police. As a lawyer, I've thought about that a lot and wanted to share some thoughts with you. I'm Floyd Abrams, and this is Speaking Freely. When should you have a lawyer with you? Well, let me start at the beginning. Sure, if Alex Murdaugh had been my partner and he'd asked me, do you think I should have a lawyer with me? I would have said yes. In some other circumstances, though, I would have paused a bit. I would have thought, is it really going to look as if he did something bad that he needed a lawyer with him with respect to, something like murdering his wife and son? Is that going to send a message? Well, with Murdoch, I don't think it was ever a close call. His partners were right. And while things didn't work out for him, they could only have gone worse if he didn't have a lawyer there. What I wanted to talk to you about today is a little broader issue suggested by that. When do you call a lawyer? When does it make sense to do so? I mean, there are situations in which someone is a public figure and wants to be well thought of, is going to be reported on. Alec Baldwin. You remember the question he asked when the police first came to him after the bullet that he inadvertently caused to be shot was found, and there was a dead person. What did he do? He asked the police when they came, is anybody going to be charged with this? And they said no. And so we sat with them for some time, talking and talking and talking. And I can imagine would make sense to me that he thought not only would he have a better shot of persuading them that he had nothing to fear because he had done nothing personally wrong, but that as a very prominent public person, he would be risking looking as if he thought he had done something wrong to have a lawyer with him. Now, that choice is not one which most people have in a situation in which they might be accused of something. Sometimes you just won't know. Sometimes you're somewhere and something happens and the police come, and it seems to me that in that circumstance, you don't need a lawyer. And if you do have a lawyer, the police will mark it down. Think about it. Wonder, why'd you have a lawyer with you? But where it is a situation at all in which you could be accused or even suspected of having done something wrong, let alone criminal, you sure need a lawyer, and you need it from the start. And if you ask for one, you'll get one.
Just start at the top, take your time.
Like when I came back here, I mean, I pulled up and I could see him, and you know, I knew something was bad. I ran out. I knew it was really bad. My boy over there, I could see it was.
Sorry.
And I could see his brain on his.
What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them and Maggie. Maggie's a dog lover, and she fools with the dogs.
One of the things that's always struck me about watching Law and Order, which I watch a lot, is that the one rule that the police always follow there, after they sometimes slap around somebody, which they're not supposed to do, but the moment the word comes out of the mouth of the suspected person saying, I want a lawyer, they stop and they leave. They leave the room. And everything begins over only after the lawyer arrives. That's one of the great protections that we have as Americans. That is not a protection that every country affords, and it is a really valuable one. What it doesn't mean, though, is that every time one is in a circumstance in which the police come, you need a lawyer. And you can only imagine that in a situation in which the police never imagined that you did something wrong, if you say, I won't talk to you without a lawyer, they'll have more than a little suspicion that at least they ought to take a second look to pass judgment about whether you're involved in a way. So it's not just a situation where you ought always to say, I want a lawyer. But it is one in which you always ought to bear in mind that you have a right to a lawyer, and that if there's any doubt in your mind about having one there, the answer is to have one there. I mean, I can't avoid thinking that whatever the South Carolina police thought when they first interviewed Alex Murdaugh, the fact that he had a lawyer with him at the interview in the car, might have led them to be a bit more suspicious. Was it worth it? I don't mean the way it all turned out, but was it the right decision? Of course it was. He needed a lawyer. He needed a lawyer very badly at all aspects of this. And even if, some policemen might think, why does the husband of the deceased murdered wife and the father of the murdered son, why does he need a lawyer unless, he sure thinks he's in trouble? And the answer is, even if they think that, even if they wonder that, in that circumstance, the one he was in, and I'm putting aside the jury verdict, I'm just saying someone in his position was well advised to have a lawyer with him. Well, what's the problem? Why do you need a lawyer? The problem is that without a lawyer, the police often use techniques, smart techniques, effective techniques, but sometimes highly prejudicial techniques to someone who they're looking at to see if he or she did something illegal, which they wouldn't do because they couldn't do it with a lawyer present. We have a reality that people without lawyers present in American courts have again and again confessed to things that they didn't do. False confessions. Why would anybody confess to something that he or she didn't do? Well, it's happened. It happens again and again and again. I read a report recently indicating that in hundreds of cases after the Miranda decision of the U.S. Supreme Court, that's the one that said that you're entitled to a lawyer, and that's the one that the police in Law and Order and in real life follow if you ask for a lawyer. But in hundreds of cases in which people were ultimately cleared, and who knows how many in which they weren't ultimately cleared, the police had said things to encourage a confession, even of people who had not done anything wrong, that the police had threatened sometimes, that the police had misbehaved sometimes. It is the fact that you can have a lawyer which prevents that in case after case from occurring. It is a great American contribution. We're not alone in the world, but it sure doesn't exist everywhere else. So what's the answer to when you need a lawyer? First, if you don't know if you need a lawyer, you usually need one. If you're thinking about it, if the police are coming and you are involved in any way or potentially involved in any way in what could be viewed as criminal conduct, you absolutely need a lawyer with you. And obviously you don't need it. I mean, if you see a traffic accident, it's ridiculous and no one would think of getting a lawyer. But there are closer cases in which you were present and there was an argument, and maybe you got into the argument but had nothing to do with the fight that occurred after the argument and as a result of the argument. Should you have a lawyer? Yeah, you should. In any circumstance in which it is plausible, even if it's not fair, that you could be accused of something, you're much better off having a lawyer there. And again, the critical benefit is that in real life, on a regular basis, around the country, once the lawyer comes, and in truth, once the lawyer is asked for, the police stop questioning. And that's an enormous liberty that we have. It is enormously protective. Does it lead sometimes to people that we would like to have confessed or caught not being caught? Sure. I mean, that's what civil liberties are about. Civil liberties are about situations in which people are protected from the state, whether or not they did something bad. I mean, they can't beat you up. Does it happen sometimes? Yeah, it used to happen a lot more at various places around the country. But the idea that it is illegal for the police to do so and that a confession will not be admitted in court if a judge is persuaded that that's what happened. That too is a part of the liberties that we have. So what's the bottom line here? The New York Times had an article some time ago in which the author basically said in so many words that the words, "I want a lawyer," should be the first thing that you say. No, not the first thing that you say. There are circumstances in which you don't need a lawyer, and in fact, there are situations in which asking for a lawyer will lead the police to think for the first time, why does this guy think he needs a lawyer? We never imagined he or she did anything wrong. But the bottom line here is, if there's any doubt, if there's any risk, if you don't know, if there's any doubt or any risk, you want to use those 4 words. I want a lawyer.